When I lose track of myself and the time I've spent in a game, that's when I know the game is something special. When I can't help but want to keep playing, when I curse the need to sleep and eat because it takes time away from continuing the story, I know the game is special. Persona 5 Royal did all of this to me. At no point did I ever register or feel like I had spent the amount of time I had on the game. At no point did the game ever feel like a slog. And in roughly 3 weeks, I spent 140 hours on the game, beating it, getting the true ending, and even beating the secret boss that is available in the third semester. Compared to, say, Wrath of the Righteous, where I did start feeling exhausted towards the end, I never did here. This game consumed me, heart and soul, and I wouldn't have had it any other way. I was honestly sad that I finished it, truth be told. Anyway, hello everyone, my name is Clay and welcome to Terminally Nerdy. Today I have the honor of inviting you to spend a nerdy moment with me as I discuss the phenomenal JRPG Persona 5 Royal, one of the best games I have played to date. Let's take our time and dive right in. The single word that best describes almost every aspect of Persona 5 Royal would be stylish. Everything about this game is stylish. The menus, the animations within them, the dialogue windows, the way the characters idle on screen, it's all got a very distinct visual style to it. The UI, for instance, is unlike anything I've seen in a JRPG to date. Not even Persona 4 was this stylized. The font is unique, the background and how it animates as you move up and down to select different options. It's all, well, stylish. But importantly, it's also perfectly understandable. For example, when in battle you don't have a standard menu like most JRPGs. Rather, you see a sort of cross over to the left, and all of your available options in combat are shown here, with button presses indicating how to select them, and more options are available at the bottom. As you select options or move around, the camera will change, your character's position will alter. If you select your gun, for instance, you will visibly draw your gun and the camera will move, and the UI will change to show your ammo. If you put the gun away, it all goes back, and it's so good. Another great feature is the use of character portraits during important conversations. These portraits are also animated, which lets you see exactly what emotion the characters are trying to convey. Even without the voice acting, which we will get to, these portraits help contextualize the feeling of every scene. And the palaces. Dear God, this game's story dungeons are all unique, fantastic, and at times disturbing. The bosses and enemies within them are wonderful as well, although, admittedly, some of the enemies are a little risque. For example, bondage angels. Or giant penis monsters riding chariots. Yeah, that's a thing. But you also have things like a monkey warrior or a giant armored behemoth. I kinda have to wonder at times who hurt the animators and artists who came up with these very bizarre things. Also, the attack animations are wonderful, and some of the boss attacks are flippin' wild. I never felt the urge to even try to skip combat animations or anything. Also, the animated and in-engine cutscenes are fantastically done. A+ all around. Much like the visual style, the music in this game is fairly unique. In most JRPGs, since the settings tend to be either high fantasy or sci-fi, you get very solid but sometimes very generic sounding music. However, Persona 5 Royal takes place in the now, in our world. And because of that, the music is much more eclectic. There's a lot of rock, jazz, and funk in the soundtrack here, and a lot of very calm, almost ASMR stuff as well. There were times I would just sit in the LeBlanc Cafe, for example, just vibing to the music there. Sadly, I do have an issue with one particular song. It's not a bad track at all, I want to be very clear early on about that. However, it's used as background music for a palace, one of the game's story dungeons, specifically Palace 6, so it's deep into the game. The song is called The Whims of Fate, and honestly, it's a banger for its 3-minute 14-second runtime. I linked it in the description box below Just don't read the comments or spoilers there if you want to go listen. Here's the thing. It's a full song. It's got lyrics. Imagine hearing a 3-minute song with full lyrics on repeat for an hour or 4 hours. I spent 4 hours total in Palace 6, and after an hour, I had to mute the game because of this song. It was driving me and my wife insane. Also, my favorite track in the game, by far, is the literal final palace of the game. It only plays in the 9th palace during the 3rd semester, aka the royal portion. It's called Gentle Madman, and it's perfect. That song is just heartbreaking and melancholy, and perfectly captures the feel of the final palace of the game. Second would be the final boss music of the game, Throw Away Your Mask. If you look these up, just, again, don't go into the comments because of spoilers. On the sound design front, it's good solid work. Even the little clicky noises you get when you're selecting things in the menu are nice. The attack sounds and whatnot are wonderful, and the voice acting is absolutely stellar. Every character has a voice that seems to perfectly match their personality, from Skull and his sort of punk attitude, to Fox and his oddly weird artistic vibe. I love the voice cast, top to bottom. Even the mascot character, Mona, was great, and I usually hate cutesy mascot characters. If you are unfamiliar with how the Persona series works as a whole, let me give you a rundown. You are a high school student, and as such, the game plays out over time in a day-by-day fashion. Each day, you will attend school, if it's a school day, and then you will get 2 time segments to use to spend time doing a variety of things. If it's not a school day, you still just get 2 segments. These could be hanging out with your friends, working part-time jobs, visiting locations to train or study, or doing the game's dungeons. In Persona 5 Royal, these are called palaces, or the side dungeon, which is called Mementos in Persona 5 Royal. And you will need to maximize your time. You see, your combat ability is directly linked to your social stats. Doing things like hanging out with your friends or NPCs will raise their confidant rank, which is directly linked to your persona's power when you summon or fuse new personas to use in combat. Having high social stats, there are 5 stats, Guts, Charm, Proficiency, Knowledge, and Kindness, can unlock new confidants or allow you to progress further in confidant ranks. Progressing in confidants can also be gated behind these social stats. Further, having a high confidant rank can unlock new abilities, like duplicating skill cards, getting a maid who can make coffee or curry for you, getting access to new healing items, and so on. But each time you do an activity such as hanging out with a confidant or going to work or training to raise a social stat, or going into palaces or mementos, you use up one of your segments of time. And once you use both your segments for the day, you move forward a day and life continues. Also, bear in mind that until you get a certain confidant maxed out to rank 10, when you go into a palace or mementos, you will not be able to leave your home in the evening because you're too tired. When you do have access to a palace, you only get so many days to finish it or it's game over. Granted, the game gives you plenty of time usually, like 14 days or more, to finish a palace, so you can tackle them at a slow pace if you choose. Me, I usually finish them in a single shot if I can to, again, maximize my available social time. This game is truly all about planning and maximizing your time on a day-to-day basis, balancing both your daily life as a student alongside your life as a phantom thief. When you do decide to tackle a palace or mementos, you will then be dealing with this game's combat, which is an incredibly deep system. Each of your party members only has a single persona, which you can sort of think of as their class. They are themed as well. For instance, Skull uses a persona with a focus on physical skills and lightning, while Mona is all about wind and healing. Each persona has strengths and weaknesses as well, just like your enemies. Now, your character, they can actually equip multiple personas and switch between them during combat. You can get new personas by negotiating with enemies that you have downed by hitting them with a crit or weakness, and if you perform well in this negotiation, they will join you. Taking these personas to the Velvet Room later, you can then fuse 2 or more of them into completely new persona, which can then gain experience and level up based on the confidant that they are linked to. It sounds complex, and to a degree it is. But the game introduces these systems to you slowly and gradually, letting you fuse more powerful persona as you progress forward. I mentioned the strengths and weakness system, and this is the core of Persona's combat. Once you hit an enemy with an attack, you will then learn if it is weak, strong, or neutral to that attack. If it's strong against it, for instance, it takes less damage. If it's neutral, it'll do normal damage, and if it's weak, well, that'll knock it down and trigger a once more attack, giving the character who hit the enemy an extra turn. Eventually you'll learn how to baton pass as well, letting you give that extra turn to a teammate and boosting their damage output. And if that teammate can knock down a different enemy, they can chain the baton pass to another party member and so on, till everybody gets a free turn, if you know what you're doing. There are more complexities here, such as null, repel, and drain, as well as status effects and technical type attacks, but the strength and weakness system is really the core to understanding and maximizing your experience with the game's combat. And by the way, enemies can and will trigger one more attacks as well if they hit a party member's weakness. I'm going to be splitting up the story of Persona 5 and the added Persona 5 Royal content apart, as they really are two separate narratives. And if you played the original Persona 5, the story here is mostly intact, although there are two new confidants added that are much more important to the third semester, and one confidant that is now expanded rather than automatic. And if you want to access the third semester, you will need to max out all three of these social links before November in-game. I want to keep this part as spoiler-free as I possibly can, but sadly I will have to discuss the opening moments of the game to explain the setup. If you want to avoid that, understand that the narrative of this game, both the original Persona 5 narrative and the additional Persona 5 Royal stuff, is some of the best storytelling I have seen in-game and should be experienced. Alright, slight spoilers are incoming. You have been warned. The premise of this game is pretty straightforward at the start. You are a kid who has had their life effectively ruined by someone with power. Early on, prior to the game's start, you stopped a man from assaulting a woman. The man then used his political and social power to threaten the woman, who then claimed that you attacked the man without provocation and are thus expelled from your high school. Your parents send you to live with a family friend near the only school that would take you in, Shujin Academy, and it's clear that basically everyone believes you to be a violent offender with violent tendencies. As you try to live a normal school life, you will eventually encounter supernatural beings and a supernatural world, and find out that if you steal the disordered desires of the people who create palaces, these sort of mental castles where they perceive themselves to be the almighty rulers of them, you can then force people to have a change of heart, which is basically their inner self coming out and making them realize what horrible human beings they are, and forcing them to confess all of their crimes and repent for their sins. From here, you assemble a team and become the Phantom Thieves, stealing hearts by night and living a good student life by day. Now I want to give a bit of a warning here before you go running off to play the game. This game tackles very mature and real-life themes and issues, and should honestly have come with a content warning. This game deals with issues such as suicide, depression, physical abuse, mental abuse, sexual abuse, and exploitation in various forms, abuse of power, and more. None of it is played for laughs, or is trying to be edgy either. It's all played straight, and fits the narrative and story they are telling here. But it can get dark. Thankfully, you are always trying to fix these issues, and it feels really good to force one of the game's various villains to have a change of heart and confess. Now, outside of that main narrative, you have a story for every single one of the game's confidants. These stories expand the world and give much better insight into each character. You have a doctor, for instance, who is atoning for a crime they feel they committed. The caretaker, who worries if he's good enough for a child that he took in. The fanboy, who feels he was worthless till he became a fan, and so on. They are all excellent and worth doing. Hell, even your party members, who are confidants in their own right, have stories to tell that connect them further to the plot and world. From start to finish, this game kept me enthralled with the stories it told, and the characters are fantastic. I loved every single one of the characters that I met. Also, the ending of the original game? Magnificent. Just bloody wonderful. I teared up as it occurred. But what about Royal? So let's get this out of the way first. the devs have stated that the third semester is not canon, as Persona 5 Strikers is the canonical sequel to Persona 5. I disagree with this, simply due to the fact that the third semester could easily have taken place, and no one would want to talk about it or discuss it ever again, given how sad, depressing, painful, and honestly personal that it was. Not in a bad way, mind you. The villain and story of this arc were straight up gut-wrenching. I felt bad doing the entire sequence because I understood what the antagonist was trying to achieve. However, this is very much a post-game story and is not connected to the events of the original story, and if you missed this, it wouldn't be the end of the world. Where the theme of the original game was standing up for what's right even if it means breaking the law, the themes of the third semester are all about pain, loss, and how running away from your past can be dangerous. And while the villains in the original story were perfectly designed to hate, I couldn't hate the antagonist here. The game even made me question if what I was doing was right. It was, without a doubt, an amazing bit of storytelling, and as far as I'm concerned, it's the canonical ending to the Persona 5 story, even with Strikers sitting right over there. I need to tell you a bit of a story here before I really give you my final thoughts. The original Persona 5, released on September 15th, 2016, over 5 years ago now as I record this video in 2021. Persona 5 Royal, the definitive edition if you will, released on March 30th, 2020 worldwide. In 2015, I had to sell my PS3 as I had lost my job and needed the money. I did this before the Persona 5 announcement, and let me tell you, I was bummed. At the time, I had played Persona 3 and 4 and was in love with the series. The Persona series is special because unlike many JRPGs and RPGs, which are high fantasy, sci-fi, sci-fantasy, or post-apocalyptic, the Persona series is urban fantasy, taking place in the now, with supernatural elements directly alongside the real world. It's honestly my favorite type of fantasy genre, and knowing that a new game was coming out that looked as good as it did, but that I was going to be unable to play, I was crushed. Since then, I have wanted to play Persona 5 in some fashion, and it's only now, 5 years later, with the generous gift of a PS4 from my longtime friend Nate, and the gift of the game itself from another supporter of mine, that I was finally able to experience this phenomenal game. And as far as I am concerned, it is a crime that this game has been locked to the PS4, PS5 for as long as it has. It needs to be on the Switch. It needs to be on PC. This game is something that every fan of the JRPG genre should be given the chance to experience. The fact that its fucking sequel, Strikers, is on all these platforms, but the original isn't, is mind-boggling. Sure, you can play Strikers without having to play Persona 5. I've had friends who've played both tell me that. But knowing how the Phantom Thieves meet, having gone through their struggles in this game, it would make the experience of a sequel that much richer in my eyes. If you have a way to play this game, you should. 100% should. It's worth every bit of your time and money. It's why, for example, that when this review goes up, I'll have started live streaming a new Game Plus playthrough of the game. I want to share this experience with the world, with those who can't access the game. You can check the description box below for a playlist archive, or catch me live here on YouTube as I work through it. I truly hope that Atlus pulls their head out of their collective asses and port this game, and the eventual Persona 6, to every system that can support it. This game was worth the wait. As always, I want to thank you all so very much for watching, and I hope you subscribe for more RPG content. Check me out on Patreon if you're so inclined, and leave a comment on this video letting me know what you think, but no spoilers. If you want to talk spoilers, you can poke me over on Twitter at TermNerdy. And hey, be kind to each other, stay nerdy, and I'll catch you all in the next one. Take care.